Okay, yeah, so I'm going to be talking about biodiversity monitoring and how we can potentially gather more and richer data at scale. Um, okay, so we really need more global data about our planet. The current understanding we have of biodiversity, health and patterns and the impact of climate and biodiversity, etc., it's all usually derived from shallow, short-lived and localized data collection projects. Now, there are loads of platforms out there for biodiversity monitoring, and you can kind of group these into three kinds, um, which I'm going to quickly run over. So you've got devices like the Audio Moth here, which does passive audio monitoring. It's a great example of a really successful open source platform. And these kind of devices are usually low power and cheap, but they're single purpose. They really lack capabilities for multi-sensor integration and have sort of more intensive on-device processing. At the other end of the scale, you've got devices like this one here on the right, which are commercially built, usually multi-sensor. They provide super rich data, but they're usually not really feasibly deployed at scale, given their expense and the usual budgets of conservation projects, as well as their power hungriness. So what most researchers end up doing custom building devices for whatever they're monitoring. And now obviously these provide exactly the data they need to, as they've been designed that way. But again, they're not really feasibly deployed at scale. There's a whole sort of design process, getting them manufactured, etc. So our goal is building a new kind of general multi-sensor platform that can be deployed at scale. And this will enable us to generate richer multi-sensor data, allowing for deeper analysis, kind of streamline the whole data collection process. And there's also a carbon saving here in lowering the power consumption of these kind of devices. They're usually obviously deployed in sort of the world's most remote environments. And right now, the current state of things is that once batteries die, researchers go out and physically replace them, which is obviously carbon expensive, particularly if you've got devices you're in the middle of the Amazon rainforest, for example. So how are we going to do this? Having these kind of multi-sensor capabilities and supporting power-hungry sensors like cameras, as well as on-device machine learning and other intensive data processing, requires beefy power-hungry devices. So the key here is effective battery management. So we're actually looking at building a prototype multi-sensor device. I'm kind of going to skip over the hardware today and more look at the on-device scheduling, but I'll quickly run over. So we're using an ESP32 microcontroller, but a custom variant, which has a really low deep sleep current, which is important, a RISC-V ULP, and other nice power features. And we've also integrated this with a 5-pixel camera and PIR for motion-activated camera, an I2S microphone for audio monitoring, and a few other sensors. But yeah, I'm mostly going to focus on scheduling today. So this low power hardware is nice, but it's obviously useless without its sort of effective scheduling. And we're going to look at using fixed schedules as well as on-device reinforcement learning for scheduling to potentially enable dynamic and greater energy saving, as well as having the sort of useful side effect of generating large-scale information for conservationists by kind of learning the activity patterns or whatever is being monitored. So we use query learning as our reinforcement learning approach. It's a really simple model-free based algorithm, and it learns discrete state action values. So you essentially end up with a state action table, meaning inference is a table lookup, the highest Q value for your current state. We discretize our state into time, hourly periods. The actions correspond to a number of fixed wake-up rates. So the device wakes up every 3 seconds or 5 seconds, for example. And we have a reward based on the number of events detected, or the difference between the number of events detected and the energy consumption of the device. So how do we evaluate this without obviously having to put a device out there for an extended period? So we were looking at the sort of the use case of passive audio monitoring. We obtain this continuous audio data, which is from an existing device out in the Borneo rainforest. We process this data using BirdNet, which is a bird vocalization detection model. And this kind of generates us event timestamps and durations that kind of model a realistic event schedule. The other part of this is that we also require real-time event detection on device. If we're using number of detected events as part of our reward signal, we need to be able to detect them on the device. So we do this using first using Gertzel filtering, which is a simple thresholding approach, but this gave us a lot of false positives. So we also ended up building a kind of bird net, a distilled bird net for real-time event detection also. And both these approaches, process a recording at sufficient latency to enable real-time detection. So here are the power measurements of the various device modes. So you see the really low deep sleep current there, which obviously jumps up for recording, camera activation. We've got transmission. We've also got the power consumption of updating the Q table, as well as for Q learning inference. And here's the results. Now, obviously, these are really preliminary results, but the headline is that we can see or possibly get a battery lifetime of over a year using a 13,400 milliamp hour battery without any kind of recharging going on. And like I say, this is a conservative estimate as we don't use solar or other energy harvesting methods. I'll quickly run over this graph here. So we've got the battery lifetime in years, the number of captured events. You see the various fixed schedules. So here the device wakes up every 3 seconds, for example, records, detects events, goes back to sleep. And then you've got our reinforcement learning based schedule here, which kind of gets us, a nice battery lifetime over a year, whilst also capturing almost 90% of events. So yeah, it was a really quick run through of stuff I've been working on. Here's an archive preprint, which goes into lots more detail on everything there. Yeah, thank you for listening.
Very much. That's good. We got any questions for Josh? Do you want to take them?
Would there be any environments where the QL isn't very useful if there's like continuous events, or it's really, really unpredictable?
Yes, good question. We haven't obviously massively evaluated this yet across those environments, but there likely would, yeah. I mean, the environment we actually used here, the device we get the data from is located in the Borneo rainforest. There's obviously a lot of bird activity. We're actually getting, I think, over 1,000 bird vocalizations detected every day. So that's quite an intense environment, and it does an all right job. But yeah, obviously more evaluation needed.
Do we have any questions online?
Yes, we have one question. The question is, custom-built devices are the result of very study-specific demands for the hardware. How does your approach provide a solution to that?
Yeah, so we're still obviously in the middle of designing this actual platform. The idea is that we're going to build a device with lots of sort of open GPIO input-output, as well as built-in sensors, so that hopefully we can cover a lot of use cases. And a big part of this is identifying sort of common requirements for these kind of biodiversity monitoring tasks as well.
You want to take you?
Listen. There you go.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your talk. I'm just wondering, I mean, I suppose it's riffing a little bit off the last question, whether you have plans to kind of modularize the design, because it looked like the camera was really expensive, and that meant you needed a really large battery, which if I wanted to steal something and sell it, I'd go and steal your battery, right? So have you any plans to kind of think about being more parsimonious in the hardware and kind of, make it require less a big battery?
Yeah, good question. So I actually started off this kind of going down this project looking at batteryless and whether you could potentially use batteryless sensors for biodiversity monitoring, and we kind of found out that the hardware doesn't really exist yet for doing that, given the power requirements. But yeah, it's definitely obviously something we've got to think about. Yeah, whenever we're actually getting further on in the design of this and modularizing it, how we could enable you to maybe remove components, support different battery sizes, and then maybe even go batteryless if you're in the right environment. So something like bird monitoring could potentially be a use case there, as your device would likely be up a tree, you could put a solar panel on it. But for lots of other use cases, especially if you're on the jungle floor or something, then it's not really possible.